Targets, 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 right? So we're at that time of the year in Australia where we're coming to the end of the financial year. I know it's different for the States, but here it's the end of financial year. For us, in one of our companies, well, two of them actually, it's the biggest sort of quarter of the year, right? It's what we call in the financial year. So what does that mean? Targets, right? As a company, as a business, even as an individual, if you're working in sales, what's your target? Like I said to my guys, our sales executive team this morning, and bringing them all together and creating some hype around that, which I think is super important. But talking to them personally about you could earn a third of your income in 2 months, like a third in 2 months. And I spoke to them about, don't take your old self into a new year and don't do the same thing you were doing last year and expecting a bigger result, because that won't happen. So just trying to get people conscious around targets, right? And I think most businesses actually don't understand what a target is. So, well, what do you mean by target? Well, I'm talking about fiscal target, an economic target. Like the business will have a baseline OPEX, right? So operational expenditure, like standing charges, operating expenses. Standing charges are those charges that don't go away, right? Like insurances, lease, rent, all that sort of stuff. And then you've got operational expenditures, which go up and down, which is seasonal. It could be wages go up and down. Someone leaves, you drop your OPEX for that particular category on the balance sheet, right? So what I'm saying is, you have to cover all your operational expenditure at the time of the year. So it's your wages, insurances, lease, rent, anything that you can think of. There's a number, right? And here's what businesses normally do, especially SME, small to medium enterprise businesses, is they actually don't know what their OPEX is. No idea. They think they know what it is, but they actually don't. Because there's all these hidden costs on the balance sheet that you actually don't realize. And what happens is, you put the business or yourself in a position where you have to trade insolvent using money that's not yours, like superannuation or your 401k or tax money that you have to pay back to the tax department, right? You don't want to do that because you have to pay that money back eventually. So targets, man. So, I've been on targets this week a lot, really thinking about strategically what they look like. What did we do in the last 3 years? And then I extrapolate that into the current time frame based on the amount of sales executives that we have, based on where the company's at, based on the marketing spend, based on lead generation, based on CPA, CPL, and ROAS. I get all of this information, I put it into one place and I start to dissect it. So I can get as close to the number as I possibly can. By the way, last month, by using that process, I was probably about 7% off it. 7% off target. So it works, right? So if you're a small business, you're a sole trader just working for yourself, right? Just an ABN guy in sales and any type of business, a tradie, whatever that may be, a carpenter, plumber, whatever. It doesn't really matter. What's your target? Like, what did you earn last year? And are you conscious about sort of what you're going to earn this year? And what about next year? So that's called growth, right? So what's your percentage ratio growth? Some people just go, I want to make 10% more I did last year. Yeah, but why? Oh, what does that mean? Why is it 10%? It's like the same old thing, same old questions. I want to do this, yeah, but why? Oh, I don't know. I just want to be happy. What does that mean? Oh, I don't know. And I always say, well, go get a bowl of ice cream. Who doesn't love ice cream? I actually don't like ice cream that much. But so, being conscious about your targets. I've been heavily into it and I've been looking at metrics, man. Targets for me is all about mathematics, right? And equations and solutions. So what I'm trying to figure out is, based on what we did last year, based on the current metrics, what do we end up with in targets for this month and next month? If it's the busiest time of the year because the market's the market, right? How do we leverage as much as possible to generate as much revenue as we possibly can? And if you walk blindly into the forest like Bambi with a red dot on her forehead and someone pulls that trigger, man, you could go out of business. So you got to be very conscious about it. So here's what I do, and I've actually done this. I've been working on targets and budgets since I came back from New York, and I'm back in the CEO seat, because I've really been conscious about mathematics, right? How the business is operating, not based on what I think or what people say, what the balance sheet tells me, what the meta backend tells me, what Google Analytics tells me. So I look at all of that data with my team, and I've done this. So first thing is, small business, entrepreneur, contractor, consultant, whatever you are, what's your target for the month and next month? Especially if you're in Australia, right? Like end of financial year, there's leverage in that, understanding what that means for your business and for yourself personally as an individual. So what's your target? When you get your target, critique it. Why is that your target? Do you have any logic set behind it? Like, is there a foundation of logic? Is it a logical target? The next thing is, actually, let me go back to logic. You have to think about, in terms of logic, this is what my business costs. This is how much tax I'm estimated to pay, right? And this is the profit I need to maintain a quality of life. Because that's why you got into business in the first place. You know, isn't that right? But here's the thing, most people go into businesses and they lose money for many, many years and they end up either selling it for next to nothing, or they go insolvent, or they go bankrupt. Because why? They're not conscious about the targets, which underpin everything else, right? So if you want a good quality of life and you want to be ice cream man and be happy, that requires money. So just be conscious of that. What does it cost me to operate my business in its entirety? And what sort of profit do I want to, you know, have a holiday with my family, pay for my kids' education, drive a nice car, you know, and all that really sort of cool stuff, which, you know, business owners, they pull all this money out of the business. And then the operational expenditure and the expenses and the debt of the business, and debt is not good, grows, right? You know, my companies are debt free, every single one of them, which is very rare for the amount of revenue we turn over. But it's because I understand the mathematics and the metrics that underpin each brand. Now, if you're a startup, yeah, you gotta pitch and catch that, and there's some balance with that, I get it. And you might leverage things that you probably shouldn't, but if you have to do it, I say go for it. But you've got to have a mindset and an ethos that has to go back. You know, you can't keep leveraging the money in the company and expect it not to fall over, because that'll probably happen. So, okay, so logic based on expenditure, and then the next thing you do is strategy. Like, how do you actually get to the number? Because if your number was say 100,000 last year, and this year it's 123,000. Well, in that $23,000 additional, right? What are the actions, activities, and the metrics that underpin that 23K? Are you going to increase your marketing budget by X because the CPL on that product's gone down? You know, what are you going to do? I found a great person. If I get rid of that salary, this person's only 10% more, but they can do twice as much and do the jobs of two people, right? So you're investing in your business. Talent is an investment, by the way, it's not a cost. So, you know, is it that? I don't know, you have to figure that out. Like, how do I get that extra 23K, you know? Now, if you really push that out, and we're talking about millions of dollars, and you're doing $10 million a year, and how do I get to 13.5? Now it gets bigger, right? This is when metrics really count. Because in that 0 to 1 million, yeah, sure, it's like, you know, no harm, no foul. It's a little bit easier, but when you get to 1 to 3, it gets harder. 3 to 7 gets harder. 7 to 10 gets really hard. 10 to 25 gets super hard, right? So you have to figure out in terms of the complexity of the number. If it's 23K, it's not that complex, right? If it's 2.3 million increase on last year, it becomes complex. So you need to be more strategic. You know, you got to have a board, you got to run ideas through, you got to vet them, you got to use algorithms, and you got to build a predictable modeling, right, for your business, which I did. So those key 3 things are super important to get right. And then it comes down to planning, then it comes down to execution. You got to execute against it. And then you've got to track it. And if you're going to track it, you have to report on it. And if you're going to report on it, someone has to look at it, and then it goes back again. Then you've got to execute against the information that it gives you. Are you down? Are you up? Are you flat? If you're down, you got to do more. Or what you're doing is not working. You got to reevaluate it. You got to re-execute. If you're flat, well, that's not working. You got to reevaluate, re-execute. If you're winning, great, let's lean into that and do more of that. Data will tell you that. So that's a really quick run at it, right? But, you know, I guess the learning for this video is that, what's your target? Do you have a target? Maybe you don't have a target. If you don't have a target, man, you got nothing to aim for. You're going to end up in not a good spot. I guarantee you. I see it all the time. I speak to small business owners and don't even know their numbers. I go, how much did you bring in last month? They go, oh, X. So what's that made up of? They go, what do you mean? I'm like, dude. So just be conscious of it. So targets, underpin it by 3 key pillars, and have a plan, please. I hope that helped. I'll talk to you next.